Awesome. All right. Welcome everybody to session 1, room 5. This is Aries Learning, preparing students for humanity's multi-planet future. We've only got a handful of us in here right now, so it can be a really interactive session, but I've got plenty to share with you guys. All right, I will dive right in. I did share that I've got a welcome question for you. Then I'll share a few thoughts on it and get into the content. But are students really ready for this reality as symbolized by the Starship, which we're talking about being orbital ready here probably within a month, doing its first orbital test flight and being a large capacity reusable rocket that can go anywhere in the world in 90 minutes, never mind the moon and Mars. So with this symbol in mind, are students ready for this reality? What do you guys think? Brady, I think you had some reaction to this, right?
Yes. I mean, I think, I mainly teach all high school students. And so the degree of exposure is different than younger kids, and curiosity is always there, et cetera. But I also think that there's so many competing narratives in their brains about so many things in their lives that at times they don't realize the implications of new stuff. And so I think the level of exposure and, kind of how often they're able to engage with even just the modern happenings and the modern progressions around this thing, really, they're totally unaware of it. And so it's about getting that hook into them, and then, and then they can begin to be ready.
I love it. Yeah, the hook is all important, isn't it? And Elizabeth is saying right now her 4-year-old grandson is asking questions, so they are curious. Holly, you raised your hand. Fire away.
Yeah, good morning. So I've been living down in Starbase, and it's been incredible. Yes, I moved down there in July after 4 trips down there in a year. So, but I've watched what Jack and Helen, who have makers down there, they have a maker space, MSX, and watching what they're doing with the kids in the community has been amazing. It is incredible, and the community involvement with the schools and SpaceX down there is great. So I think we're on the right path to getting our children ready. I wish this would have came in my lifetime a lot sooner when I was young. It would have been incredible. So I'm just excited to see what happens next.
So great that you get to be a part of it now. It strikes me though that
Yes.
what you're experiencing is a little bit like what Soyun was expressing about growing up in South Korea. Like those kids are right there, by a major hub of SpaceX activity, and reaching other kids might be more challenging.
Yes, so it's been amazing to see just the overall world involvement. Everybody coming together from every walk of life right now, and I am loving that part.
Awesome. There's a couple others here, and I saw some fun facial reactions. It'd be great to give you a chance to chat. But yes, go ahead. Is it Renu, or how would I say that?
Yeah, hi. My name is Renu Raju. Actually, I'm very excited to talk with so many very exciting people from the different part of world, especially so many astronauts and people with the dream of astronauts. I'm very excited. And at this moment, what I want to tell, actually, my nationality is India. Currently, I'm in London. Actually, my dream is to become an astronaut. When I was in my childhood, from my high school level, I'm dreaming to become an astronaut. So, but I know in my education system or in our curriculum, there is no training or anything is there for promoting the students to dream an astronaut. Nobody will believe in students' dream to become an astronaut. I know that very well because I am from a rural area. So at the moment, I started my aerospace engineering. Almost I completed, but now I am believing I can reach in my dream, and I can totally, I can give so many. I can promote the students. I can what I can tell. I can inspire the students, the upcoming generations. I'm thinking like that. So I am very happy to join with this section, and thank you all. Thank you for giving this good idea.
Awesome.
It's a great section.
Yeah, you make me think of what Chris Zimbrowski was just saying too, that we have to tell these stories, right? We have to engage with kids to get them involved. But any other responses before I dive in? Terry, I saw you unmuted.
Before you dive,
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm most of the students that I engage with are middle-aged people. Most of them are university students, graduate level, and almost all of them across the board are military, active duty. They're all over the world. And I have to say, it's the same reaction that I get as I'm speaking to the middle schoolers, right? It's the exact same. Their fascination with what we're doing, how we're so immersed in what we're doing, and sharing all of these nuances that we see and feel every day. Although I wish I could say I felt the the overview effect more, but I tend to feel it often without having to go to space, which is interesting as well. But anyway, I see there's Mac. Oh my God, Mac's in.
Hey.
So MU, by the way, MU is Cole, in case you're wondering who MU is. And anyway, we're all here for you, Mark. So
Hey, awesome.
Lead us on.
And I saw, who's that? MU? Oh no, Brady was responding to Renu Raju about startups and space education startups in India. One of our speakers later today, Ashwini, is actually, she might be presenting right now too, is doing exactly that in India. She's got a company that teaches kids about space. So really cool. All right, I will go ahead and dive in. And one of my thoughts with respect to whether or not students are ready for this is not just the return to the moon and first people to Mars and commercial space stations and that sort of thing. But when you look at technologies that also have the capacity to completely revolutionize things here, I think the next 10 to 15 years is going to be similar to the first 10 years of the internet or the first 10 years of smartphones. When we look at the fact that Starship can land anywhere in the Earth in 90 minutes, that changes a lot of industries. And if we look at ubiquitous satellite broadband like Starlink and competitors that I'm sure will come behind it, that changes a lot of things geopolitically, never mind a lot of industries. And if you look at high definition real-time Earth monitoring that's really becoming a reality right now in video, that's going to change more industries than I think we can imagine. So it's not just getting kids ready for this multi-planet reality of returning to the moon and going to Mars, but the changes that are coming in the space economy are going to impact everyone. And are they going to be prepared to be a part of that and take advantage of it, if not be leaders in that world? So the vision I'm proposing, and we've put a lot of work into this, is a school focused on space education. And for what it's worth, I'll share right up front that we currently have areas in a startup accelerator. We are approaching this as a fast growth business, which typically you don't think of a school as a fast growth business. But we think we also have a beating economic heart inside it to fuel that. So I'm probably mixing metaphors, but what we're talking about is a school focused on space workforce development. And again, this is certainly scientists, engineers, pilots, but it's also space law, space history, space interior design. There's people that literally have these jobs today. And so we're starting out with a lot of ground to make up in terms of preparing kids for that. Whether they're going to work with composites at a SpaceX facility assembling vehicles, or they're going to be studying the psychological effects of all of this. There's going to be room for everyone, as Beth Moses said this morning. There will be a space for you in the space economy. So what happens if we optimize school for that? If Elon Musk, for example, says he'll hire you regardless of your degree if you're passionate about solving problems. That's actually a whole different skill set and mindset that we can optimize for. And that's different things that we need to teach. So the school is built around that idea. And of course, preparing kids for that multi-planet future. Are today's second graders, as I said in our last session, when they graduate in 10 years, are they going to be prepared to potentially be the first settlers on Mars and to be leaders in the economy that's built up around that? So one of the ways we're going to do that is harness this next generation. You certainly see stories all the time about teenage inventors and entrepreneurs who launch unicorn companies, but they typically have to leave school to do it. So what we're talking about doing is harnessing that and making more of it. We're at a time where there's this critical need, particularly post-COVID, for more engaging schools. For instance, I saw some statistics recently that 40% of New York City public school students are chronically absent. 70% of teachers in LAUSD report burnout and a desire to leave the profession. That's right now post-COVID. So we need to re-engage these kind of key demographics in school. And one way to do it is space, because people are excited about space right now. There's a lot happening in commercial space and various international space programs. It's exciting again. Another way to do it is student entrepreneurship. According to US Census data, about 10 to 16% of Americans are entrepreneurs, own their own business. But 60% of 8th graders want to own their own business. That's a pretty big gap. So somewhere in high school, where 50% of our population in the US is going from wanting to own their own business to giving up that dream. So how can we harness teenage innovation and prepare those kids, give them what they need to be successful entrepreneurs, even if they're being entrepreneurial in a larger organization, right? So the experience that we're building this on is the 20 years prior to COVID. The company that I founded previously worked with innovative schools all over the globe. And the framework that we wound up publishing is this sort of honeycomb you see here in the corner of this slide. This school, by the way, is one of the schools we used to host events at, Iolani School in Honolulu. They built this beautiful new building with their maker space downstairs and a sustainable garden on the roof. But like many of the schools we worked with, they had these 6 elements in spades. So innovative schools invariably have courageous leaders who are more than willing to empower their teachers from the bottom up, right? Because you're going to need to have that if the whole school is focused on student agency, the kids being the ones who are making, creating, doing, editing, sharing, etc., right? And that's definitely what we're talking about at Aries. Inspiring spaces are key. It doesn't need to be beautiful new buildings like at Iolani, but a space that reflects the culture of the school, perhaps not students in rows with a third of the classroom committed to the teacher at the front on the board, but does the space reflect the collaborative, open-ended learning environment and learning culture that you want in the school? Robust infrastructure is certainly important, as is engaged community. We found that if kids have access to the right technology and the right support, they don't need the same kind of time sitting in rows to get through the core content. In fact, our schedule looks very, very different. One of the things we learned in the pandemic was if kids did have access to the right technology and the right support, they could do their core curriculum in about 90 minutes, 2 hours. They don't need 6 hours sitting in school. So what do you do with the rest of the day? We design around that. So at Aries, it's that first couple of hours in the morning is blended learning at the kids' own pace with teachers available for tutoring and consultations. And then we move on to more meaningful things to do with our time. Our whole lunch program is inspired by Edison's midnight lunch. He would bring his late working engineers together to share ideas and create opportunities for synergy between their projects. So that will be the same for our kids. They'll all be working on stuff in the Moonshot Lab, which I'll talk about, but they can bring that to their lunch, and perhaps kids with a biology project will spark something interesting in kids with a robotics project, or vice versa, right? So the front part of the week, we have this Launchpad curriculum, which is inspired by all the classes we had in university and grad school that we wished we had in high school that you might as well have had. So exposure to anthropology and linguistics and philosophy. But also this is their opportunity to get into astrophysics and orbital mechanics and things like that that might be relevant to careers in the growing space industry. And a lot of opportunities for synthesis, actually borrowing from Josh Don's model developed at SpaceX when he ran a school inside SpaceX for Elon's kids and the employees' kids. They did a lot of scenarios, challenges that kids had to solve in an open-ended manner together collaboratively. And all of their scenarios had ethical dilemmas as part of the scenario, so that you're dealing with sort of moral decision making as well. With that Launchpad curriculum and those opportunities for synthesis, they bring all that then Thursday and Friday into the Moonshot Lab. And this is something we did actually in Hawaii for 3 years prior to COVID. We had some funding from the King Kamehameha Foundation, and we asked kids, what problem do you want to solve? You've got us and all the resources of the school, the Moonshot Lab at your disposal. And they did amazing things. They launched businesses and nonprofits and put sensors in the ocean and their own clothing lines and you name it. And it was the proof of concept for the Moonshot Lab at Aries. And the other thing I'll talk a little bit more about as we get into it is we build in opportunities for the Japanese concept of Hansei, or relentless self-reflection. This is what went well today, what went wrong, and what could we do better yesterday. This is the concept that sort of rubbed American businessmen in the wrong way in the 80s, right? Like, what do you mean you're telling us what we did wrong today? But that's how you get better. So I clicked ahead a fraction of a second earlier, but the one of the things we're going to be able to use in this program during the Launchpad is the space education curriculum that we developed at Space Prize Foundation over the past year. I was really excited to be a part of that program, running contests to inspire and empower young women to be a part of the growing space economy. But we also had the opportunity to author an ambitious space education curriculum. And any of you can get this, by the way. It's just at spaceprize.org/education. And it looks not only at a introduction to space science and history of space exploration, which you might normally find in this kind of curriculum for high school kids, but why does space matter to people here on Earth and the environment and so forth? What skill sets and mindsets are kids going to need to be successful in this growing space economy we're talking about? And it moves on even then to issues of space philosophy, so sustainability and governance and ethics and existential crises and so forth. And that Cosma hypothesis that Frank talks about, being shepherds of life throughout the solar system and beyond. So I'm really proud of it. If you print this out as a PDF, by the way, it's about 550 pages, like it's a legit textbook. But it's all linked. There's thousands of links, so it's a really fantastic place to start with kids. So speaking, by the way, is it Renaraju, if I'm not butchering your name too badly, in London and in India, like this is a great, for anybody who's speaking English, this is a very accessible curriculum for high school students or even adult enthusiasts, I think. So when we talk about the skill sets and mindsets that kids need to be successful in the growing space economy and in humanity's multi-planet future, I think of 5. The first of those is the explorer's mindset. And this is National Geographic has a great program for kids around the explorer's mindset. But this is the comfort with the unknown. This is also a presumption that the solutions to your problems are out there. It's a sort of abundance mindset too, right? That if you keep trying, you're gonna find a solution. And of course, there's this love of discovery that we hopefully give people the opportunity to flip that switch that Chris Bosshausen was talking about this morning, with the explorer gene that turns on, and you want to go further and farther and discover more. So that's built into, when I say you can optimize for the skill sets and mindsets kids need, there are lessons, there are activities, there's experiences like the scenarios from synthesis where you can build in the explorer's mindset. For us, once kids have that, we like to introduce Moonshot Thinking next, before we even get into design thinking, because Moonshot Thinking is sort of taking those blinders off and thinking big, thinking outside the box. This is 10x thinking, kind of famously codified by the folks at Google's X Lab. This is their Venn diagram, where they look at a huge problem, like, for instance, more Americans die in car crashes than anything else. They consider a radical solution, like, what if we took the human error out of that equation and made self-driving cars? And then they developed the breakthrough technology to do it. So they launched what is the company called now? Waymo, of course, the self-driving car company, and now Tesla and everybody else has similar technology. But you've got to be starting from this position of tackling a huge problem with radical solutions, and then you figure out how to do it. That's where it gets its name from the moonshot, of course, in the 60s when Kennedy said we're going to the moon, even though we don't know how yet. And they got it done. They figured it out. But you've got to have that before you apply your design methods. Otherwise, what you wind up is giving the users what they think they want, and you wind up with very small iterations instead of those 10x leaps in approach. But once you have an idea that you've developed through good moonshot thinking, then you've got to actually develop it. Then you do need to do that sort of empathy step of going out and listening to users, defining the problem, ideating possible solutions and sub problems as well, and prototyping those and testing them and sort of starting the whole cycle again. This has been increasingly popular in education over the last decade or so, and we've seen it done really, really well. So this is a big part of our program too. And Brady, I just saw your comment about the Explorer electives. That's pretty fantastic. Yeah, it's really relevant to space exploration too. So once we've got kids doing moonshot thinking and they're applying design methods to that, we also introduced the scenarios we talked about and opportunities for synergy and synthesis to pull things together with those ethical elements of decision making as well. I feel like I sort of covered that, and I sort of covered Hanse. But those are the five, when I say skill sets and mindsets, it's that explorer's mindset, moonshot thinking, design methods, synthesis, and that's in my mind also the collaboration, socially negotiated learning, if you will, and reflection in Hanse. So that all comes together in the Moonshot Laboratory. I mentioned we did this in Hawaii, and we had funding that was focused on indigenous kids in Hawaii. And these were kids that typically, didn't care so much about school, and not a surprise. Apparently, they weren't allowed to use their own native language or to dance their native dance at school. Like, these things were forbidden, which is just like, we're talking a couple of years ago. It's just wild. But a lot of the problems they wanted to solve were embedded in their culture. So this works anywhere. The methods are agnostic, if you will, but in Hawaii, the kids wanted to, for instance, build planetariums to teach traditional Polynesian navigation methods. And this is a prototype you see that was quite small, but they built a full-size one with projectors and everything that you could walk into. That was spectacular. And another group created an app that would, like a star chart app, like you might find for ordinary constellations, but it taught the Polynesian constellations. They launched, like I said, clothing lines. They put water sensors to test the water quality in the ocean nearby. Those are still generating data today. They created a drone to drop emergency equipment in high surf. So just really, really cool stuff. This question of like, can kids do this, is unequivocally yes. So then the question becomes, if we create this program that I'm outlining, and kids have this opportunity to knock out the core curriculum in 2 hours with the tutorials and support that they need, to experience this Launchpad curriculum with exposure to lots of other disciplines for a shot in the arm of creativity, if you will, and opportunities for synergy and synthesis. And they're empowered with the skill sets and mindsets from Explorer's Mindset onward. Hopefully, they are then going to be well prepared to be a part of this growing space economy, to be a part of humanity's multi-planet future, and to be leaders in making that happen. So I've got a ton more sort of supplemental content, but thought I would pause here for discussion. We've got about 20 minutes left, and if we fill it with discussion, great. If questions in the discussion lead to something that I've got other resources for, I will share those. But I don't know if you guys have any initial thoughts or reactions to what I was sharing.
Brilliant stuff, Mark.
Thanks, Terry.
I mean, I don't know where this is going, but it feels much bigger than, I don't know. We're going to need lots of people talking about this particularly. And I that was something I had a chat yesterday with Dr. Miller, who is my PhD professor. She's like, listen, we have to consistently speak the message. And and even when I'm speaking to a 35-year-old, military vet who has never gone to school, and this is their first venture into an undergrad program, it's the same message. So it's really interesting. I do have several school-age children, so I have this chat a lot with my kids. I have 4, and so we're busy talking about this all the time, and I think at our level, I feel like it's almost we're not doing ourselves the justice in the long run unless we're just chatting about this constantly. And I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm too repetitive, but I don't know.
You're going to have the parent-child dynamic with your kids anyway, right? I mean, my kids are not as excited about playing hockey as I am, so similar with space. But they're hearing it.
I do know that about you in the hockey.
And Rob, I'm seeing your note too about figuring out a way to do analog astronaut programs with students. I think that's a great way to look at it, because I mean, if you can send kids to space camp, great. And if you can get to a Challenger Center, it's amazing what they'll do for a class for $500. You can get your entire class to go through a simulated mission to Mars, and the Challenger Centers are all over the country.
Yeah, we had one near us, and it was pretty amazing. I never actually got my kids to go there, but I'm really regretting not doing that, because we were going to I was actually going to bring my son to space camp, and then COVID hit, and that was going to be his 18-year-old. We always take him on a trip or whatever, but eventually we'll get there. But I did space camp out of high school, and I still think about it. I still talk about it like it was just like the best thing ever. And it was, you go there now and you're like, oh, through the eyes of an adult, this kind of looks like rinky dink, because we've seen things change in the world so much since then. But looking at it through my eyes as a 17-year-old, having just graduated high school, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm at freaking space camp, and if you can get that, if you can capture that desire and that drive early, you can propel those kids into those careers that will get them into space.
Yeah, it's amazing. Space Camp just hit their 40-year anniversary.
They did.
I got to go twice. I went in 5th grade and 11th grade. I think I would have been about 17 on the last trip too. But it's amazing how many people you talk to in the space community that had that experience. And I think whether it's Space Camp or Challenger Center, giving kids that, which you can do in your classroom now with simulators or Kerbal Space Program for that matter.
Yeah,
giving kids like analog experiences, right?
Yeah, my son's a really big KSP guy. He plays. He's still playing it now. He's like 19, and he's like
awesome.
hours and hours in his room. He just built something and has it in space. He's launching drones and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I need to get a better computer so I can play it with him. But
well, one of the beautiful things is that the original one anyway doesn't need that many resources. But it's awesome to watch kids, we'll turn in a paper for a grade and not care.
Yeah.
If about the details, or if they even not care about the grade. But can they land a Kerbal on the moon and get him back, or on Mun and get him back? They'll do it again and again.
I know I can't.
Yeah. Brady, sorry though, you raised your hand. What?
That's all right. So I think I love how you set this all up, because I do think that particularly young adolescents and even up through older adolescents are just so vastly underrated, and we just constantly bombard them with, this is what you should know, this is what you should know, and that actually isn't how the world actually works. Like, the world operates on fixing problems, so why are we constantly telling them things to know when you're not actually practicing the solving of problems? And some of the projects that the students in our research program at my school have come up with, like, I mean, MIT professors are like, yeah, please go and patent this like right now. And this is a 17, 18-year-old stuff with airfoils and 3D bioprinting, and it's just like, and I think you hit on the key part of that, which is you have to give them the time and space to do these things. And we built it into a class So,
which is what the education system does, right?
right. And that's exactly what the education, right. Find that place for it. But at the same level, you think of even some of the kids that, perform so well at, say, ISAF, like they're doing that in spite of the fact that they weren't given time, that they're finding their free time on their weekends and their afternoons. And it's like, imagine if they didn't have to do that. And imagine the other kids that are purposely choosing not to do that because they don't want to do that in all of that other time, because you want time to relax and enjoy, like do other things in life.
Yeah.
And so I just love the setup of that, because I think that's how, at least in America, the education system really fails our kids, but also fails our broader economy and society, in the fact that we aren't unleashing this great resource until, they're 23 years old. And that's kind of holding everybody back.
It is. And I felt the same way for years, even about, just that last thing you said, like, even when it comes to looking at real research, using Google Scholar, for instance, to look at actual, like, why do we not do that until we're in grad school? And why do we not publish original research until we're in grad school? It's not the way a high school science class typically is set up, has nothing to do with science. It's repetition. You're not actually practicing the scientific method.
My issue is along those same lines. Like, I have dyscalculia and I didn't realize that I had it. It's basically like math dyslexia. Like I cannot operate. I have really limited working memory. I can't do, complex math without a lot of aids. I'm very high on the verbal, but I'm really low. I was tested as really low on that. But part of the reason I think that I got that way is because we taught math. Well, this was back in the 80s. We taught math in a very non-constructive way, with non-constructive criticism. I would go into a class and I would actually I had a freshman algebra teacher tell me I was dumb. We were teaching it we were teaching it in the wrong way of, here's a problem, figure it out. And it's like, it's just a bunch of algorithms that don't tell you, what am I doing this for? What's the point of this? These story problems are ridiculous. Who has 600 watermelons? Like, who freaking cares? Like, I don't care about this. I want to know why I'm doing it. And nobody would tell me. And my kids are still having the same problem. They go to a Montessori school and they come home with the same math homework that I had, just stupid angles and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, why? What is the point of this? And I try to tell them, well, in trigonometry, you do this, and this is useful for that. It's still not sinking in because they're not getting it in the classroom. I remember my college freshman year, I was taking trigonometry and I was struggling so hard in this class. And I got to the end of it, and then they started showing us how pine cones are structured, and pine needles and fractals. And I'm like, that's why we were doing this? Why didn't you tell me that at the beginning? I would have been way more interested, and I would have applied myself a lot more, because I would have been understanding, what is it that I'm doing this for? So we have to get out of that mode. That's just my 2 cents.
Hey, I recently jumped on, I don't know, Mark, if you know Ann Miller. She's pulled together a really cool educational initiative, right, to get back into school, STEM related, not STEM. She's very clear about that. I'm not pushing back on that, but I'm on the advisory board, and the people that are on this advisory board are some of, honestly, I wish some of us were here, there, on this group right here, we're there, but it's pretty impressive how we can pull together all these resources and these assets, and then we need something else, right? Someone like yourself, Mark, who has put yourself out there and said, hey, this is what we need to be doing. Maybe even to the point of getting cut a little. But I feel like we're close. Maybe it's this forum and these venues and these methodologies we use to communicate with each other that made it easier, perhaps, because it seems a lot more simple now than it did even a few years ago, in my opinion.
Yeah, coming out of the education technology field, there's a lot of talk about being the lone nut at your campus, right? And over the last 15 years, say, it's been so much easier to connect like this with like-minded people, and to be able to sort of build community and collaborate and create things. Yeah, the possibility of, you know, opening a school focused on space exploration today. You know, I still live in Irvine, California, but you know, when we open, we're going to be connected to a community of astronauts and engineers and scientists and lawyers and historians around the world, and have no trouble finding like the right innovative teachers who are comfortable with these methods, because we've all been connected like this for years already. And that wouldn't have been possible before. And Brady is that lone nut.
Yeah, you can tell, Brady. Look at your background. There's like nutsdom everywhere.
Still good. Well, let me open it up to the others, if particularly anybody that hasn't spoken up or participated yet. If you have thoughts on this or something you want to share, now's a great time. Oh, and there is Mac. Fantastic. Saw his picture go by. I do have a few other resources I can share with you guys, and a little bit more detail on this program if you're interested in that. We have our pitch deck here as well. I've got a second deck, but let me make sure you've got the links I was talking about too. This is the Space Prize curriculum. There we go, and then the other one, if I can pull it up real quick. The book I wrote on space education, which just came out in August, is a collection of 13 academic papers focused on this. So it looks at a lot of the same things I was just talking about with Aries in the first third of the book. And then the second third of the book looks forward to how might we educate kids on the moon or on Mars or in deep space habitats. And just thinking through the 46-minute time delay in communication between Earth and Mars gets really interesting. Even this morning, you know, Ron was saying, you know, if he would take a VR headset if he had to go to Mars, but it wouldn't do you much good if it wasn't connected to the internet here. So there's, you know, you can't do VR with a 46-minute signal delay. You can't even do it on the moon with a couple seconds delay. You'd get seasickness unquestionably, but or motion sickness. But anyway, so the book looks a little bit further ahead, and also looks at some of those philosophical issues like sustainability and governance and ethics and moral decision making. So alternative governance systems. So if you guys are interested, check that out. Wanted to be sure to share those resources with you.
I love your so I went to the Amazon page just then, and it gives you the other choices of things to look for. There's Loretta's book, Lori Garver's book.
Yeah.
That's pretty good company.
Well, I imagine you're logged in, so that may have something to do with it too.
I am always logged in.
Well, if we've got a couple of minutes in, I'm going to go ahead and share screen again and share with you guys a couple of other slides that might be thought-provoking. Let's do this. This is a different version of the deck. So I mentioned that we have this in we have Aries in a accelerator right now. We're in the new chip accelerator, which has a really fantastic 70% funding rate for the startups that go through their 6-month program. So it's kind of ours to screw up at this point is the way I'm looking at it. And we are having some really great interest and traction that I'm really excited about. We don't fit the mold of most startups, so when we have to explain the problem we're solving, I actually use this slide and explain that we're a solution at the intersection of 3 problems, because we have that critical need for more engaging schools that I was articulating with those statistics earlier. We have this growing need for workforce development in the space economy, and then this massive untapped opportunity for investment in student innovations. Typically speaking, this is a problem that just gets left unaddressed. Like venture capitalists don't have the time to go find the best student innovations, right? So if we've got a Moonshot Lab that we've already shown works and we're running that at a school level, then you can take sort of the best projects that come out of the Moonshot Lab, the ones that have an opportunity to be monetized, and support the kids, support the teams that generate those ideas in doing that, and prepare them really just like what we're going through in New Chip with an accelerator curriculum, so that they know how to set up all the tools they need to set up a company, set up a Delaware corporation and be able to communicate their idea succinctly to investors and pursue startup funding for their idea, if that's the route they want to go. Maybe they're going to go a nonprofit route or something else. But so we're a solution at the intersection of those three things. So it is an engaging school preparing kids for the space economy through entrepreneurial education, because the school is also a startup accelerator, connecting kids with VCs. And the school will through a warrant, own a portion of each company that's launched from the school. So it's a long runway, but within 5 to 7 years, then there should be revenue coming back from any exit events as kids fund and exit their companies, right? And that pays right back into the school and funds additional education. So we are pursuing a seed fund to launch the first site. The idea is to launch 4 more in the second year. So there'll be 5 sites in aerospace hotbeds across the country, so we can do those analog experiences, and then to build from there. But the way we see it, this fundamentally disrupts the existing education system and can be implemented then everywhere. And our hope is to work directly with schools and districts to help implement similar programs inside the public system. But because the school is an accelerator that would be self-funding over time, this cracks the nut of a challenge I was given 15 years ago by a colleague, Chris Walsh in EdTech. He said, if you can solve a free private school, then you can make real change, because then you can legitimately compete with the public school system. So we talked a long time about, is that a teaching school where you charge for professional development? Do you have sponsorships? Like, how do you make a free private school? Well, you tap into student innovators and help them monetize their ideas. And that's one way to do it. So the context is mind-boggling. The education industry already today is $1 trillion industry. The space industry today is about 400 billion a year. It's projected to be about $1 trillion within a decade. And if you do the math, student startups, so that's 60% of 8th graders that want to own their business. If you project that through high school, and you look at the value of those startups over the next 10 years, you're also looking at about $1 trillion market value of untapped innovation. And if we look at it, investors like to see the bottom-up calculation, not just the big numbers, right? So if we have 60%, if we have a cohort of 100 students in our first cohort, 60% of them theoretically already want to own their own business. So we're just going to optimize for that and help support them in that. And maybe they create teams, right? So 35% of them it's reasonable to assume, if they go through a structured accelerator program, and we're talking about their whole school being an accelerator, 35% funding rate is pretty reasonable. Some of the more successful accelerators, again, 20% exit rates are reasonable. Quite high, that's good, that's fantastic. Much higher than like the average census data on small businesses in the US. But with a successful accelerator, 20% is a reasonable number. You also jump from about 5 million valuation for the average small business to about 250 million if they've been through an accelerator over 5 to 7 years or 6 years in census data. So you take 60% of 8th graders want to own a business, 35% of them get funded, 20% of those have an exit event, but they're averaging about $250 million at that exit event. The portfolio value for 100 kids is $1 billion. Right? And again, with the pre-IP agreements, Ares would own about 10% of each company, or about 100 million in value coming back to the school. And that's one campus, one cohort of kids. So great to understand the bottom-up math. I think if you implemented this at scale in communities across the country, not only would the wealth stay in the community, kids don't have to move. Zuckerberg wouldn't have had to move to Silicon Valley to launch Facebook, right? Not only does the wealth stay in the community, but this is like GDP changing stuff. So I'm at the end of my time, but maybe that's a fun slide to leave you guys with, that we really can do this differently. And these are our bottom-up numbers with reasonable expectations. I think we can empower the next generation kids in a totally different way.
How do we find Ares, Mark?
What's that?
How do we find Ares?
AresLearning.com will get you to the current site. The name, by the way, is an acronym for the Academy for the Relentless Exploration of Space. And we love it for the Mars associations, thus the sort of the red circle with the rocket logo in it. It is understandably also the god of war, so there's some pressure to improve on that name. But I think the idea that, I mean, nobody complains about Mars being incredible, right? The idea is it's this academy for the relentless exploration of space. We are clearly focused on Mars in the next generation, and it seems to be an inspiring element for people. So thanks for asking, Terry. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording because we'll have about 15 minutes to the next session. But thank you guys for all being here and for contributing to the discussion.